Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Welcome to Podcasters Live. One of the things that, as I've entered this content creation space, podcasting and live streaming and all these other things, one of the things that I have come to learn and know is that my experience has actually boded well for me. All of the different things that I have done in my life, I didn't realize that they had a compounding effect on the impact that I would have on the people that I connect with, the people that I talk to, and also the content that I create. As you can tell by today's title, we're going to be talking that age has does not limit your creativity, and we have an amazing guest on today, and we're going to be talking to him and about his story and the content, and also the amazing website and books that he has created. We'll be right back. All right, once again, welcome back to Podcasters Live. Our goal here with Podcasters Live is to assist authors, leaders, and experts amplify their message utilizing the combined power of live streaming and podcasting. We are excited today. My guest today we are thrilled to have our special guest, Gramps Jeffrey, who is the author of the children's book, I Don't Want to Turn Three. How many of us, remember when we were younger and we were getting older, we wanted to remain a child for as long as we possibly could, right? Because we didn't want the responsibilities of adulthood. So I'm really interested to hear and learn about the process behind this book because I bet you there's a lot of us out here who probably just don't want to turn 40. So we're going to be talking a little bit more about this. This book explores the thoughts and feelings of toddlers, something that many parents can relate to. Gramps Jeffrey's inspiration for this book comes from his experiences with his six grandchildren, who were all born to three millennial daughters. Gramps Jeffries is actually the pen name for my guy Marc Joseph, who is also the author of the book The Secrets of Retailing: How to Beat Walmart. As a former retailer, I am ready to dive into this book as well and to hear more about this as well. This book was written to help small businesses and entrepreneurs compete with larger companies and caught the attention of Ariana Huffington, who asked Mark to contribute to the Huffington Post. Currently, Gramps Jeffrey, Marc Joseph, is also the co-founder of a new website, and it's called babyboomer.org, which provides news and resources for baby boomer community. So we are excited today. Please welcome in our guest, Mr. Gramps Jeffrey or Marc Joseph. I'm not sure which one you go by today, man. I'm gonna call you both.
I appreciate you inviting me.
Excellent, man. Excellent. I'm glad. I am so glad you're here today. So glad you're here today. Right. So, one of the first things, we've connected on various things, and I'm excited to kind of be partnered with you to being a contributor to babyboomer.org. So I want to start there, right? So as the founder of babyboomer.org, I want to know a little bit more about your inspiration behind actually starting it and where it is today, and then where you see it actually going in the future.
Well, the baby boomer generation is as diverse as other generation before and after us. Whether we're divided on religion, we're divided on politics, or we're divided on all kinds of different thought processes. But the one thing that baby boomers do have in common is a shared experience. When we were growing up, we had three television stations, everybody had a landline, so we all had the same information. And so we have all these shared experiences. I mean, we grew up with the Kennedy's assassinations, Martin Luther King's assassination. We were there for the landing on the moon. We were there for when birth control became really widespread. Vietnam, we lived through Vietnam, riots in the streets. But we've got the music together that we all love together. it's Elvis or the Beach Boys or the Beatles or Three Dog Night or the Supremes. Those are all the music that drives us as together. We've got the movies together, whether it's Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, or
Mm,
Jaws, or any of the Spielberg movies, really. Animal House, Star Wars, The Godfather. These are all experiences that we grew up together. So we've got all these shared experiences, and we wanted to create this site where we can go on to, with our past shared experiences. In other words, we offer these, resources for retirement and travel and dealing with family, things like that. But we also are looking at the new challenges that we have to, as a baby boomer generation, whether it's technological advancements, all the
mm.
health issues, the big areas of Alzheimer's, dementia, and all that on this site. It's a one-stop shop for baby boomers to find out all kinds of information about what we used to live with and what we're going to live with in the future.
I love that. I like what you just said. What we've lived with and what we're gonna live with in the future. As you start to think about this, we're gonna talk about your book here shortly as well too. But I feel like when I've visited the site and connected with you, I felt like this site, of course, is for baby boomers, but I think it's also for people who are it's also like it's like a letter to people who are aging and who will eventually become a baby boomer. Is that something that you thought about when you actually were thinking about this site? Was it that perspective of not just for baby boomers, but people who are going to be actually kind of moving into that area or that of their life as well?
Well, it's interesting. We built the site really just for baby boomers, but we have
Okay.
seen the traffic on the site that we're getting the younger generation coming to find out about their parents.
Mm,
They're trying to figure out who are these boomer parents I have to deal with. But also at the same time, the people are worried about dementia, Alzheimer's, and Parkinson's, and all that. And so, they're coming to the site to learn more about that, whether they are having to deal with it themselves as baby boomers, or whether they're the children of baby boomers that are looking at their parents and saying, I got to come up with some solutions. So you're absolutely right. Our intent was really to have baby boomers come, but now we are learning that it is a resource site for just about every generation.
mm. Yeah. The interesting thing too is that we focus in, of course, podcasting and live streaming, helping people kind of create those platforms. And the amazing thing about the site is that the level of content that's actually being created is of course by baby boomers, right? Or people who are actually getting in, or eventually going to be a baby boomer. Um, it almost slaps. I mean, it's a very contradiction in the context of that. People almost kind of haphazardly talk about as you get older, right? The creativity or from a technological standpoint kind of goes down. I don't see that in this site or even the people that are associated with that site. So that's a misnomer. And what are your thoughts about that aspect where people say, "Oh my gosh, the older you get, like technology, I don't actually see that taking place."
Well, when you think about it, there are still 12 million businesses that are owned by baby boomers. Right? That's a huge number of businesses. Now, down the road, they're either going to have to pass it on to their children or sell it to someone else. But that's the reality of today. 12 million businesses are
12
still
million.
owned by baby boomers. On our site, we currently have over 200 different podcasters. We've got 600 experts and contributors of information. So everything on our site is developed by the experts in the field. And take you for an example. You're on our site.
Yep.
Well, you don't look like a baby boomer, all right? But when you think about it, what you talk about, the creativity, is right up baby boomers' alleys, because not only do you have the 12 million businesses that are still owned by baby boomers, but you've got all these baby boomers who want to have a little side business, want to start something new, want to get involved. When I remember when I was your age, I looked at my parents and they were years old, and I said, "Boy, do they look old." But now that I'm there, I feel young. And I think the whole generation we have as a whole just feels a lot younger than the generations in the past. And we're not ready to give up yet. We got a lot of things to to, to accomplish. We've got a lot of things yet to do. And when you think about it, as you get older, you do get smarter. The reason you
Mm,
get smarter is because every decade that you live, you make a lot of mistakes
right.
and you learn from those mistakes. So as you get older, you get a little wiser because you've made so many more mistakes than our kids have and our grandkids have.
Mm,
And it's our responsibility as baby boomers to pass that on, to teach the younger generation. It's our responsibility to get involved with our grandkids and our children and let them know. I mean, because again, we're living longer than the other generations have. And so we need to pass on this knowledge to make their lives easier.
yeah, I completely agree. If you had to kind of list maybe, three things that are top of mind for baby boomers relative to their concerns, whether it could be in the marketplace, it could be personal, it could be something, because I think information like that, will help the audience, those who have baby boomers in their family, and those who may not have baby boomers in their family, but also, as you start to talk about creating content and products for people who are baby boomers, right? There could be something that the audience can hear that could be like, oh, that's an idea I was actually thinking about. And maybe just let me just go ahead and create that because it could be of assistance, but they don't really know what, maybe troubling, some of the people in the baby boomer community. What are some of your thoughts on that?
Well, let's talk about entrepreneurship. Let's
Yeah.
talk about opening businesses. In my view, today, if you're an entrepreneur or you want to open, this is the best time in the history of our country to
Yeah.
open a business. I'm fully convinced of that. Reason being is, when I was younger, everything was brick and mortar and was, so, 20, 30 years ago, when you opened a business, your customers were within the same county or within the same area. And so, it was expensive to open a business. Like you, I was in retailing. So when you wanted to open a business, you had to go find a location, you had to put down the rent, you had to hire people, you had to buy products. So it was very expensive to open a business 20, 30 years ago. But what the internet has done for all of us
Mm,
is it's
mm,
created a chance for you to go beyond where you used to market to your neighbors and the people down the street and the people in your county. Now you have the whole world to market to. So the key is to come up with the idea that can the people around the world can relate to. So your customer base now becomes not just locally, but globally. And it doesn't cost you what it used to cost you to open a business. So if you've got anyone in your audience that is thinking about, I'm going to open my own business or I'm my own thing, this is the best time in the world to do it. This internet has created such an opportunity for
yeah.
everyone that you need to dive into that. Now,
Yeah.
let's talk about what causes businesses to fail.
Mm,
Okay, because if you're going to open a business, you got to make sure you feel confident that you're going to keep it open. 50% of businesses today fail within the first 5 years. Think
mm,
about that. That's one out of every two businesses. If you got the greatest idea, why is it failing? Well, what causes businesses to fail? There's probably three different things that cause business to fail. The first thing, which causes probably 40 or 42% of the businesses to fail, is that you really don't have a market for your product.
mm,
You don't have a market for your service. So you may think that you've got the greatest thing since
yeah.
bread, but nobody else does. And so you got to make sure you do your research. So if you're thinking about opening a business and if you're creative and you're thinking about, make sure that you're not the only one that likes it. You got to find people. I learned early on. My first half of my career, I was in corporate America and working for some major chain stores. And I learned very early on that as a buyer, I couldn't buy for myself. I had to buy for what the customers wanted. Because if
Yeah.
I started buying for myself, the stuff wouldn't sell. So you've got to make sure that if you're going to open a business, that it has to have you have a market for your products or your services. So do that research first, because if that's what causes 40% of these businesses to fail,
Yeah.
is nobody wants it except you. Another 30% of businesses fail in the first 5 years because they don't have enough capital to stay in
Mm,
business. If you're going to open up a business today, if you're going to, whether it's a creative business or a brick and mortar business, you got to make sure that you have to assume you're not going to have any sales for 6 months.
mm.
Okay, what are you going to do during those 6 months to pay the? So you've got to make sure you've got enough capital, whether you've raised it yourself or you've got it from your baby boomer parents or you've got the relatives that gave you some money for it. You got enough dollars to keep in business as if you had no sales for 6 months, because that's why 30% of the businesses fail.
Mm,
And then another 25% of businesses fail because, they have poor teamwork.
yes.
You have poor communications within your business. Entrepreneurs are very egotistical. They think they know it all. But you got to realize, if you're an entrepreneur and you're thinking about opening a business today, that there are so many people that are smarter than you in different areas. You've got to know as an entrepreneur, as a business owner. You got to know what you're not good at. Yeah, taking me for example. I don't like accounting. You stick me in a room for 8 hours with a spreadsheet, I will go absolutely nuts. So I've got to find somebody smarter than me to be a
Yes.
CFO, to be accounting. Much as I've been in the internet business for many, many years, I don't know how to program. So I've got to find somebody who understands how to write code, how to do those kinds of things. So the first thing you got to do is admit that you're not the smartest guy in the room.
Yes.
You got to find other smart people to surround yourself. So, if you're thinking about opening a business, make sure that you hire the right people, but more importantly, that you communicate with them, that you tell
Mm.
them what you're thinking, that you guys work together. So, even though today is the best time to open up a business ever in this history, just make sure that you see the issues that could happen and try to overcome them.
Oh my gosh. You just taught you know what, we should have charged for this. Um, I'm so serious. You just gave such a, you know, an answer that people pay money for. But here are the things, right? And I know these are probably in your book around how to be Walmart, but those are not just basic business principles, but those are just fundamental, like, business principles that a lot of people don't follow. And here's the other thing that I just have to completely agree with you. And I raised my hand when you said it about the accounting thing. I my undergrad is actually in accounting. Um, I went to SUNY Plattsburgh, and I lasted. However, I only lasted probably about, I want to say, 6 months in accounting. After I got my degree, I went back to New York, and I was working in accounting, and I couldn't stand it. I could not stand it. I was in this office, like, trying to make my trial balance, and I could not do it whatsoever. I couldn't stand it. So I completely agree with you. And I think the other side of of some of the things that I hear, and this is going to relate to kind of the audience that's out there, is just around knowing your strengths and what you're really good at, because I think the tendency, and what you don't like to do, the tendency is that we try to do all these things that, we think that we should do because we own the business. But at the end of the day, if it's not your secret sauce, I'll give you an example with what I do with retail leadership with Steve Worthy and Podcasters Live. I love doing this, creating the content. Now, the marketing side of it, I have completely someone else who helps me do all of that stuff. So I learned from a very, very young age to make sure that I understand my strengths, and I kind of outsource some of my weaknesses. As we're talking about this, kind of talking about business, let's talk a little bit about your book, about the secrets of retailing and how to beat Walmart, right? I think some of these principles that you just spoke about are probably in that book. But what was your inspiration around writing that book? And then we'll talk a little bit about the other book that you wrote too. Yeah, let's do that, man.
Like I was saying earlier, my career was in corporate America, but then I decided I wanted to become an entrepreneur. My parents were entrepreneurs, and I saw how they lived life. I said, that's what I want to do when I grow up. So one of the businesses I started, in fact, I started it right here in my bedroom, is a company that became the premier business-to-business site on the internet where we're selling case quantity small businesses all around the world,
Mm,
shipping to all 50 states around 40 foreign countries. Our customer base were the moms and the pops who are surviving and thriving against the chains. So this is a company, it's called dollardays.com, and eventually took it public, so it became a public company. And so as we were growing this company, knowing that our customer base were the moms and pops who were surviving against the chains, I started getting, these questions from our customers. I get like 30 calls a week on how do you do this? What do you need to do? So I wrote the book, The Secrets of Retailing: How to Beat Walmart. It's a 15-chapter book, and it's a step-by-step guide on what do you need to do to succeed. So obviously, there's a whole chapter on how to hire people, another chapter on location, another chapter on marketing, another chapter on buying products, another
mm,
chapter. Finally, the last chapter is the exit chapters. How do you sell your business? But I wrote this book because of the passion that I had for need to share. Entrepreneurs, we're the little guys. We got to communicate with each other on how to make sure that we can compete against the big guys. The real secret sauce there is you just got to have a niche business. You've got to be able to, again, defining what you want to stand for, who you want to be,
mm, mm.
and go on. You can't sell everything to everybody. You got to make sure that you target what you want, target your customers, and that's how you can really create your own niche in today's world. And that's why this internet is so great for this, because you can find the groups of people that are interested in what you're doing,
Yes,
and then you market to them.
yes.
And that's why, again, open a business, do it.
Yeah, I completely agree. I love the idea of niching down or niching down, right? It's because what interestingly enough, what I see a lot of times in working with clients, even in leadership, right? Coaching people in leadership is that they don't understand um like their secret weapon, what makes them a really successful leader, and they try to do all these other things. They may see Colin Powell or John Maxwell, and they try to emulate some of these guys and what they do, but over time they have to figure out who they are. And we see this too in podcasting and live streaming and this content creation space, is that people are focused in on too many things. How can someone find their niche, right? Because I think that's probably one of the biggest things that what a lot of people may struggle with, is because, man, I want to do everything and I want to serve everybody, but just like you said, you can't. What's maybe one thing that you have learned and that you have taught people in understanding how to find their niche?
Listen to your gut.
Come,
All right?
come on, man. It's that
You
simple.
know, yeah. I mean, you know when you're not doing well. You know when, you're maybe telling people the wrong thing. Your gut hurts. It starts to kind of hurt. So,
Yes.
so listen to it. If you're starting on a path and inside it says, "Oh, I don't know, my gut's kind of hurting," because when your gut doesn't hurt, that's when you develop your passion.
Yes.
That's when you figure out this is what I was meant to do.
Yes. Man, I love you so much, man, because you didn't give, I talk to a whole bunch of people all the time, just a whole bunch of people, and they give 5 and 6 different things, man. And when I'm listening to them, I'm like, okay, 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 like, dude, isn't it just about like instinct and your gut? And so when you said that, it just completely resonated with me, because I think we're nowadays we get so fixated on, like, I understand the research process that goes into to starting a business. I completely understand all of that. But I think we get so bombarded with all of the different images, whether it's on social media about this person doing this and this person doing that. And at the end of the day, when you wipe all of that away, all you really have is your gut and your instinct about what it is that you want to do, correct?
Interesting you say that because that's how babyboomer.org came about.
Come on.
Okay. Yeah, and the reason it came about, because it's myself and three other baby boomers. There's four of us who started this. But it came about. It kind of started with my children's book. Not
Mm.
much about that, but my children's book
Yeah.
is called I don't want to turn three, and I wrote this book, living the past year because of the pandemic caused by COVID-19 and isolation, except for being able to be with my family. It gave me a special time to watch and interact with my grandkids. I've got six grandkids, and
Hmm.
we were able to have all six of them at my house for 6 weeks during the pandemic because we couldn't do anything. So I got to tell you, what a trip was to watch these six kids. All these six kids have different personalities, but the one thing that they do have in common is a sense of curiosity and how excited they do get, when they do accomplish something. So watching them grow year to year and how they interact with each other really is the basis for my children's book. What goes through a toddler's mind? The parents are so desperate to understand. When
Mm.
does a toddler understand the difference between me and us? This book kind of explores how a family finds this all out together. So as a baby boomer trying to understand how since I was 3 years old, really is part of the story. When I was growing up, my parents didn't have cell phones. They didn't have the internet. They didn't
Right.
have cable TV. They didn't have remotes. I was my dad's remote. He said, "Son, go
That's right.
change
That's
the."
right.
I was the remote at the time. My parents' definition of discipline is quite different than parents of today. Has today's world really made a better place for all these children to grow up? I'll let your listeners kind of answer that question as you kind of understand how we were treated and how we treat our kids today. So it all started there. And so what happened was, as I was promoting the book and meeting more people and doing podcasts and so forth, it became very apparent to me that the baby boomer generation just wasn't involved enough in helping to
Mm.
raise their kids. You
Mm.
know, 30% of baby boomers are considered remote. That means one out of every three of us, which means that we are not involved in the raising of this greatest generation coming up.
Yeah.
We aren't.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of reasons for it, but we said, hey, I've raised some good kids. Let them raise their kids. I'll go play some pickleball. So
Hmm.
we're just not involved.
Mm.
So that kind of was the inspiration of how do we get the baby boomers more involved with the knowledge they have, with the experiences that they had. How do we make sure that they pass this on to the next generation? Now, a lot of the reason that baby boomers are not involved in the raising of their grandkids
Mm.
is because is caused by us. We may not have liked the spouse that our kid married. Okay,
Mm.
all of a sudden we may be distant from these kids. We may be giving our children unsolicited advice on telling them how to raise their kids or how to do these kinds of things. Our kids don't like that.
Right.
Like that. They're independent. They don't want to hear that. We may drop by their house unannounced. They don't want to see that. They got their rules. But we may be all kinds of reasons we push away our own kids and our grandkids. We may be undermining the parents' authority by
Mm.
challenging what our kids are teaching their kids. That causes problems. We may be having we may be playing favorites. I've got six grandkids. I have a favorite, but I'm not you. I'm not going to even tell my wife. Because you can't do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
You got to make sure that you treat them all the same. We may be giving these kids money and gifts and vacations. Our kids don't like that. We as a generation may have an overall lack of empathy.
Mm.
So we may not have the ability to understand and share feelings with such young children. And we may comply them to have respect and all that, which they don't want to do. So we have caused a lot of that. And part of our site is how do we get everybody back together? How do
Mm.
we communicate? Not only with what we want to do, but how do we communicate with our kids? Now, it's a different world today because
Yeah.
when I grew up,
Yeah.
my grandmother lived 2 blocks over. My uncle lived up the street. We
Yeah.
were all a family unit. Yeah, today I've got two kids here in Scottsdale, Arizona with me with grandkids, two in Austin, Texas, and then two in Orlando, Florida. So how do we keep in contact? What do we do to bring the families together like it was when I was growing up? So
Mm,
that's just some of the observations of how this site kind of evolved.
excellent, excellent. What was, we have a lot of people out here who are creators, and part of the creative process sometimes is that they get stuck. And that being stuck prevents them from of course proceeding. Part of that is actually maybe writing a book or creating a course or whatever. As you were going through your creative journey, did you ever get stuck before you actually completed what you've written two books, and over what 300 some odd articles or something like that, if I'm not mistaken. Did you ever get stuck? And then if you did, how did you become unstuck so that you were able to proceed and deliver on, those 2 books that you've written, and also the articles, and also the site? Because you've got I mean, I haven't even talked about we haven't even talked about what you did, prior to retirement. Like, this is all the stuff that you've done, your books, and your sites and your articles and all this other stuff, dude. You've had a career that most people, you had an after career, if you will, that most people would want as a career. So if you can, my first question was around being stuck and how you're able to kind of move past that.
We all hit a wall,
Yeah.
and there's all kinds of reasons why we hit a wall. We may be working for somebody we don't like.
Mm,
We maybe have surrounded ourselves with people that we don't like. And all of a sudden, you build up this inside wall that makes you stop. So you've got to be able to realize I've hit a wall. First thing you have
yeah.
to do is admit it. I'm stuck. And that's a hard thing for entrepreneurs to do.
Yeah.
We all have such big egos that it's hard to admit that I don't have the answer. What am I going to do? Sometimes you just gotta walk away for a week, walk away for a month, walk away for a year sometimes. When we're younger, we may have these great ideas, but we don't know how to implement them or have the funds to implement them. So sometimes it's
Mm,
okay, to walk away. I mean, I I think I wanted to be an author when I was real young. I happened to when I was a junior in college. My best friend and I decided we were going to backpack through Europe. So for 11 weeks, we backpacked through Europe. With backpacks, we rode the trains, we hitchhiked, we lived in youth hospitals. We slept in train stations. We did everything that you read about when you got a couple of kids backpacking through Europe. And at the time, I kept a journal. And so I had every day for 11 weeks at nighttime, I would write about our experiences. And then I gave a copy to my friend, and then I forgot all about it. And then about 10 years later, he called me up and he says, "You should read this journal." He says, "We should make it into a book." Yeah. So, but I, I gave up writing. And I went and I started my career in retailing, and as you well know, retailing is quite not a lot of time for other things.
yeah.
And so it took me, 20 years later to kind of say, hey, I kind of like this. That's what I want to do. So sometimes you just got to back off, let it evolve, because your real passions will come out. May not come
Mm.
out the day you want it to come out, but if you're passionate about something, it'll eventually come out.
Oh wow. I got two more questions, and what is one? It's not the I know I sent you some questions, man, but I like to go with the feeling. You mentioned about your grandkids, and you mentioned about this word curiosity. And I just wrote it down. I always have like a little notes here for, whenever I'm talking to somebody, and they say something, I'm like, okay, it may look like I'm not paying attention, but I'm actually writing notes. I just keep everything here with me because I think it's important. Um and you spoke about your grandkids in such a glowing fashion, in the context of, like, one of the things that you learned by spending so much time with them, while they're all different, they all had that sense of curiosity. And I don't want to turn 3, right? I had the other week I had a young guy on. He was 15 years old. He was actually one of the youngest podcasters that I've ever invited on my show. He was over in the UK, and he was just super inspirational. And I told him he said his goal was to inspire kids. I said, dude, listen to me. You are inspiring adults. He literally like just stole the show last week for our live stream, and he just had this curiosity about what he was doing and how he was feeling. When you said that, and I don't want to turn 3, was there something about that number 3, or is it just the mindset that, you know what, I don't want to lose that curiosity as a kid. How do I as an adult when as an adult do I lose that curiosity, and how do I kind of regain it? Because man, it's so important to remain curious, but I love when you said that because it just sparks something in me about as an adult, sometimes we end up losing our curiosity, and I think that's to our detriment.
Well, the other thing to look at is what age do we begin to really take responsibility for our actions?
Mm,
Is it
mm,
3 years old? Is it 13? Is it 23? You know, baby boomers that are 63 years old that still don't take responsibility for their actions. That's really part of it. When do you want to start taking responsibility for your actions? What's interesting about 2, 3, 4, 5-year-old kids is they have this language that they have that is so different. For some reason, they all love dinosaurs. If
mm.
you talk to a 3-year-old or a 5-year-old, I've got a 7-year-old who's turning 8. He still loves his dinosaurs. Now, if you take them to the park and they start meeting strangers, all of a sudden they start talking about dinosaurs. These little kids, these 2 and 3 and 4-year-olds, they know all the names of dinosaurs. They can tell me if they eat meat. They can tell me who they fight with. They have this whole thing. The only thing I know about dinosaurs is they're small, medium, and large. But you got this language. And so, if anyone's got grandkids, start talking about dinosaurs. I can tell you, they all talk about dinosaurs. In our particular case, it was our way of keeping in touch with the kids that don't live with us.
Mm.
You know, like my uncle was up the street when I was growing up. Well, my kids in Texas and in Florida went home after 6 weeks. So how is it that they're going to keep in touch with them? Because they don't pick up the phone call and call us. They can
Right.
they live in the moment. So we took the idea that they all love these dinosaurs, and I had 6 dinosaurs around the house that they played with. And every night we had our dinosaurs do something different. So, for instance,
Mm.
one night they were in the refrigerator eating blueberries. Another night they were by the sink with grandma washing the dishes. Another night they were playing the piano. Another night they were walking up the steps. So we put together 50 different adventures inside and outside of the house where the dinosaurs are doing something different every night. And so what happened is we became part of the routine of these kids.
Mm.
So they would have their dinner, they would take their bath, they would read a book with mom and dad, and then they would say, "What are the dinosaurs doing tonight?" So, they would call my wife's iPhone. They said, "Where's Gramps? Where's Gramps? What are the dinosaurs doing tonight?" And so it was our way of communicating and keeping in touch with the kids that aren't living around us anymore. And I'm sure your listeners have all kinds of ways that they can communicate with their family members. Doesn't have to be
Mhm.
kids. It could be just not the grandkids, but their kids. We're losing touch with our kids. And so I would just encourage everyone to think about how can we reach out to the ones we love?
Mm.
What is it that we can do to be creative? Because we're talking to a bunch of creative people in this podcast. What that we can stay in touch and we don't lose the ability because that's one of the things. My biggest fear is as these generations
Mm.
grow old and old, we start to spread away from each other. That we're not going to have the family unit that we once had.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the other thing too is that you know, before TV, before, just, years and years and years ago, meaning like centuries ago, right? We told stories, right? And people told stories, and the stories were passed down from generation to generation to generation. And, nowadays, we we don't, we don't pass down those stories and those that knowledge, anymore. It's almost like we've we don't want to know, the past, right, or what happened. We're just so fixated on kind of moving forward. But for me, when I think about, one meeting you and then connecting with you and then looking at your site, it's almost like you are once again trying to help communicate to the people who are younger, but also to create a legacy for people as they continue to move forward. You are an entrepreneur, you are an author. My last question for you is like, what's next, man? Like, where do you see, Gramps Jeffrey? Is there another book coming? What about babyboomers.org? Where do you see it now? And then where do you see it going?
Interesting that you brought all that up because
Yeah,
legacy is the one thing we can all leave behind.
correct.
And you're absolutely right. That's one of the reasons we created babyboomer.org was to do exactly what you talk about. Leave a legacy, talk about the past, but make sure we're in charge of what's in the future. As far as me, I'm working on my next book, which is I Don't Want to Turn 4. My granddaughter came to me about a month ago, and she just turned 10. And she says, Gramps, I got a great idea for our next book. I said, what is it? She says, I don't want to turn 10. And I said, why don't you want to turn 10? She says, well, I've got to start worrying about, being able to drive. I said, that's 6 years away. Why are you worried about being able to drive now? Then she said, and I got to start thinking about going to college. I said, that's 8 years away. Why are you worried about doing that now? So if you step back and think about it, I don't want to turn 21. I don't want to turn 40.
Oh,
I don't want to turn 60. There's all kinds of reasons and subjects of, we look at the past and enjoy the past, but are uncertain about the future. And
yes.
so that's my next campaign is I don't want to turn 4 and I don't want to turn 10.
Yeah. First of all, your granddaughter is adorable. Um, for even like saying that and like thinking like that. Like I can just imagine the look on your face when she said, I got to think about driving. Like I know I'm only 10, but dude, I got to start studying for my permit. Oh my gosh, that is an amazing story. It's interesting that um that's the stuff that they do, right? I mean, I'm younger, when my girls were younger, they would come to the same thing. They were like, "I wanna go to this college." I'm like, "Dude, you're 9. Like, what do you think?" Like, but no, this is where I wanna go. I've been looking at it, I've been researching it, and I'm like, Okay." I'm like, "Alright." But it's just interesting that but we play a role in that, good, bad, or indifferent and how they see themselves in the future and what they're capable of doing. Like I think the fact that she was super comfortable being able to come to her, Grants and say, "Hey, man, I'm nervous about change. I'm nervous about turning 10 and all the responsibilities that come from that." Can you leave our audience with just man, you're super wise. You're super wise. You got so much knowledge. I know you can probably write a book about leaving not just a legacy, but leave something from an inspirational standpoint. From our for our guests before we close out tonight. If you got something for us, I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
No problem. Well, keep in mind, again, we're talking about what have we done as we've grown older and so forth, that it's necessary for us to teach children how to think, not what to think.
Mm,
They're going to learn what to think over time, but we've got to
mhm,
teach them how to think. We have to teach them how to think by asking questions, by telling them, whenever you're reading them a book, always ask questions about the
yeah.
characters, get them to think early. That's our role. Is we've got to teach this youngest generation, and I really think these kids that are 1 to 10 right now are going to be the greatest generation this country's ever produced. Because when you
Mm,
think about it, as soon as they come out of the womb, they're on the internet.
come
So
on.
they're the internet. They got their cell phones. They got all this electronic learning, and it's up to us as adults to offset that, to make sure they go out and play, that they learn things besides what they learn on the internet. But this is going to be the greatest generation we have ever produced. And We need to teach them how to think. And that teaching them how to think is by asking them questions. So they, as they grow older, they can start to ask questions.
And I think, man, and I, I I lied, man. I'm trying my best to leave it there, but you keep saying stuff that's so amazing that it keeps taking me down these rabbit holes. I'm gonna, but I am gonna leave it there because you just said something around, how to think, teach them how to think. And dare I say, it's not just the kids. I think we need to remember that too as adults. As we continue to grow and learn, we need to know and learn how and continue to figure out how to think and not what to think, because if we remain curious, if we're able to continue to move forward, I think we're able to accomplish a lot more. I'm so I gotta say this. I am so happy that I have gotten to know you, that we have connected. I'm excited for babyboomer.org. When I'm at whatever it is that I'm able to contribute there, but more importantly, that what you're doing for content creators and people out there is something that is truly to behold, man. Because you have done so much in your life that you inspire me, because I have a book that's on the back burner, and now, not just now, but before, I'm actually in the throes of going to getting that first rewrite done. So I just want to thank you for being here today, man, and everything that you got going on.
Thank you. I really appreciate you inviting me.
All right, stay in the back in the green room for a second. I'm going to close this out with everybody. Wow. I really hope you were able to take some notes. I'm old school. I know everybody has their iPads and their phones and all that other stuff. I Anytime I do something, want to learn something, I write it. I grab a pen and a paper and I write it down. The information that was shared today by our guest, we spoke about his book, I Don't Want to Turn 3. But in that book, in the construct of that book, there are things around curiosity and around decision making and thinking, and how do we think and how do we learn. All these things that are not just from a 3-year-old standpoint, but for us as content creators, as adults, we still need to understand and grasp, and we still need to kind of go after. So I want to thank Grants for being here, because his story is inspirational. He's done so much more with his life than a lot of his afterlife, if you will. The one career, now he has another career. His second career, he's done so much stuff that people would love to have his second career. Today, we wanted to make sure that we let you know that as a community, we have launched our course and our coaching practice, which is from concept to creation, creating your first podcast season. One of the things that we have learned, I've been podcasting since 2007. Oops, sorry about that. I've been podcasting since 2007. The one thing I do know is that podcasters end up fading or bailing on their podcast after episode 7. So we help you create an entire season, which is 12 episodes. So that takes you past that hurdle, that obstacle that the majority of podcasters face. So you've seen a QR code kind of throughout, and you see it here, and you'll see it at the end. If you're interested in learning a little bit more about what we do and understanding how you can create a podcast or a live stream that's going to be successful, we ask that you go ahead and click on that QR code and make sure that you connect with us as soon as possible. We thank you once again for being here. Thank you for being here with Podcasters Live. We hope that you were able to get something out of this. I know you were, because I see some people in the comments didn't do a good job with the comments today. My apologies. But thank you so much. Have a great day, and God bless.